the LaxFactor podcast. What is up, college lacrosse fans? You're watching episode 203 of the LaxFactor podcast. I'm your host, Ted Hoost. It is late Thursday night. I have a beer, Blue Moon, in hand, and we are getting ready to talk about the quarterfinal matchups for this weekend. Before I get into it, as always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast or watching on Spotify, just share it with everybody. Interact with me, chirp me on social media. I'm everywhere. You can find me. And then a new thing. If you go to LaxFactor.com, like I said, you can get swag and things of that sort. But I have a new thing that I published today. I've been working on this for 3 years. It's partly what's taken me away a little bit at this point during the season, because this is kind of the crux of what I'm going to try to do moving forward into next season. I'm going to actually run this during the PLL season, but I've developed a series of formulas and an algorithm that ranks lacrosse players offensively based on their productivity and their efficiency. So I haven't figured out a name yet, but I think we're going to call the score a player's lax-factor. To be big douchebag about it. And CJ Kirst, actually, we have a couple of protections built in place to keep players from hitting 100. 99.9 is technically supposed to be where it goes, a la, having a max score for something like a quarterback rating or whatever. But CJ Kirst body bagged everybody so badly that he broke through all 3 of the protections, ends up with 100. And if you look at this list, the only surprises that I saw overall ended up being Owen Hiltz, rising to the top here because of how efficient he's been, and Jack Speedle of Harvard. No wonder Harvard's done well, and that's one thing you'll see here in this list is the teams that have done well tend to have guys at the top of this list. As we see, Harvard has 2 of the top 4. Cornell has CJ Kirst on the list. They've got, who else do we have with Cornell on the list here? Michael Long and Ryan Goldstein are both coming in down here. We also have, what's his nuts? Let me do a search. Kelleher somewhere on here. Willem Firth is on here. I think we have Hugh Kelleher on here. So far, I don't have every single player worked in, but I have generally what I think to be the legitimate top 100. We're keeping track of about 125 guys throughout the season. The goal is traditionally we want guys to have 40 points by the end of the season to make the list, but if they're on a team that doesn't have a big output in terms of points per game or goals per game, then we end up kind of putting guys in as well. But the goal of this is to weight players in a way that considers their offensive efficiency. So it takes points per game into effect. It takes shooting percentage and their on-goal percentage into consideration. As an example, what we do with the shooting efficiency score that you don't see until they're ready to be seen fully is we take the shooting percentage, we weigh that, and then we take the on-goal percentage, we weigh that, and then we actually do a calculation to make sure that if you have too wide of a gulf between your shooting percentage and your on-goal percentage, that it penalizes you slightly, because the idea being the more goals that you put on cage that don't go in end up becoming goalie saves, and that's not necessarily a good thing where you have a guy with, let's say, a 30% shooting percentage, but a 65% on-goal percentage. So these are the things that I've been considering, and I've toiled over this for 3 seasons, so this all is now ready for you all to review. So if you go to LaxFactor.com, you just hit this player ratings tab up here, and through the remainder of this season, I will keep this up to date, and then getting into the PLL season, I'm also going to keep this up to date. I don't think I'm going to cover the PLL outright, but I think I am going to cover the PLL as it relates to player data because they're doing a really good job of making data available. So I'm going to try to harness some of that data and use that to come up with a PLL specific rating mechanism. And then next season, the goal, track, the top 250 players, 200 players or so in NCAA Division I lacrosse and rate them, and then just start using the score like crazy in my own podcast, and hopefully some others will pick it up as well. So that's that. Let me shut up now, and let's start diving into these games that I want to talk about today. First game we're going to talk about, Richmond against the number 1 seed Cornell, Richmond being one of the unseeded teams. Now, how did Richmond get here? They defeated UNC 13-10 in a game that saw UNC up 5-2 at the half, only to have Richmond outscore them in the second half by a score of 11-5. The Spiders' offense woke up, their defense clamped down, and they did just enough at the faceoff dot to win this game. Throw in a solid game from Zach Vicue, 12 saves. He was 55% on the day, and you get a feeling this was kind of predestined. Richmond's been good all year. They've been consistently good all year. As we said, their only losses have actually come to Maryland, Cornell, and Duke. Not too shabby overall. So I had a feeling that they were going to be one of the upsets on board here for the weekend over UNC. They did that. Now, how Cornell got here, they beat up on UAlbany. Kirst had 6 goals off 50% shooting. Michael Long goes 2-4 as the QB of this offense, and everything overall went pretty well for Cornell, especially in the second half where they outscored the Danes 10-3 en route to a 15-6 win. Keys for Richmond in this game, I think, in order for Richmond to have a shot, at this point you kind of call it a chance in hell the way Cornell's been playing. In their 1-goal loss to Cornell early in the season, no one player had a monster outing for Princeton in terms of like an offensive game. It was just a bunch of guys playing solid and chipping in, and you tend to see that happen. Lucas Littlejohn was the big guy here in the first round of the NCAA tournament, but Aiden O'Neill was, I think, the big cat in that Cornell game. And by big cat, I mean he had 4 points. Someone else had 3. Someone else had 3, 2 right down the row there. So I think that's going to be key. They're going to have to do that again. And then the Richmond defense is really what allowed them to hang in that first game. They held CJ Kirst to 3 goals off a dish and 7 shots. I dare say that might have been Kirst's worst output of the season. He had 3 points against Princeton, so that was his worst output of the season. But, generally that's like his second worst output of the season. He's only been that low, I think, one other occasion here so far. So they did a great job against Kirst. They did a great job generally against everyone. VicU didn't play exceptionally well in that game, 51-52%. They didn't really do a great job at winning draws. They still won the game. Or they still hung and only lost the game by a goal or whatnot. Now, keys for Cornell. You could argue Cornell wasn't playing their best ball at that point when they faced Richmond in that first go. Richmond was their first real test that season. They did win the game, and then the following week they turned around and lost to Penn State at home, a Penn State team that was without Matt Traynor. The week after that, they got their shit together. They beat Princeton by 5, and they haven't lost another game since. They've just been playing lights out lacrosse here since then. So I think in the end, Richmond's defense and the way they've played, incredible team defense, because what I love about Richmond is they don't have to always slide. They can win one-on-one matchups and stay home when they have to, but if called upon to slide, to rotate, to recover, as good as anyone in the game right now. And they've been winning these games without stellar goalie play, without stellar face-off play. They've been winning these games without an absolute player pimp. Lucas Littlejohn's, kind of a player pimp, and Aiden O'Neill, in that same league or whatnot. But they haven't, they've been playing top-tier lacrosse without that golden goose, without legit top-tier guys, just a bunch of scrappy motherfuckers that get the job done. So I do like Richmond's chances in this, albeit I do think Cornell's going to beat them. I'm going to make a prediction that I think this prediction is actually kind of a hot take. I think Cornell's only going to win this game by 4 goals. That's my prediction. Cornell by 4. I think Richmond's going to probably be able to hang a little bit early. I think that they could even weather a couple of Cornell scoring spurts. That's going to be key to them being able to hang and be in it at the end. I do think Cornell will outlast them no matter what. It's possible Cornell beats them by 10, but I'm calling it Richmond losing by 4 to Cornell. All right, next game we have to talk about Georgetown versus the number 2 seed Maryland. Now, how Georgetown got here, the Hoyas used a very solid first and third quarter to beat Duke, 3-1 after the first, and then 7-all by the end of the half. It was that 5-1 third quarter that did Duke in the end. That allowed Georgetown to advance. Aiden Carroll was an absolute freak on the day. 6 goals, 2 helpers off 13 shots. Fulton Bayman wasn't too bad himself, 4 goals and a dish. Ross Prince won 20 of 30 faceoffs and picked up 9 GBs. The Hoyas' defense was solid. They won their 1v1 matchups, and more often, I don't even know what I was going to say there in my note. Let me just read the note verbatim. The Hoyas' defense had a solid outing and won their 1v1 matchups more often than they lost. That makes sense. That's what I should have said. It's how I should have said it. That's why I wrote it that way. And then in the end result, victory in the first round here. Now, how Maryland got here, they beat up on Air Force. They stifled them with a defense that gave them very few looks. When they did get looks, Logan McEnany was there to shut their asses up. He had 10 saves, just 3 goals against before he hit the bench, and then I think they gave up, 2 goals after that or whatever. Eric Spanos was crazy, 6 goals off 11 shots. It smelled like an easy win for Maryland. Before the game was played, it turned out to be true. Now, keys for Georgetown moving forward here. The Hoyas have to take incredible care of the ball. They're going to have to get quality shots on McNaney, and both of those things are very difficult to do against this Maryland defense. Aiden Carroll's he's going to put up a few points here and there, but he's going to need help. Aiden Carroll, I don't see Aiden Carroll going off for 8 points against this Maryland defense. It's just not probably going to happen. He's going to need help from his homies. Fulton Bayman's going to need to get involved. Jack Ransom, Kevin Miller, all those guys. Ross Prince is going to have to fuck shit up at the faceoff dot, I believe is the official phrase for what he needs to do. Shea Keithler, Jonah Carrier, they've been good for the Terps, but Prince is better. If Georgetown's to have any chance, Prince needs to win 60% of the draws, and that's just, I think, a matter of fact. He's a little streaky, but he's been healthy lately, and he's been playing well. Anderson Moore, it's going to have to stand on his head. He's as good of a goalie as there is in D1. I firmly believe that about Anderson Moore. He just is a little bit more streaky than everybody else, and he's playing in front of a Georgetown defense or behind a Georgetown defense that is not your prototypical Georgetown defense that you had over the last 4 or 5 years, especially since the portal, because they did take advantage of the portal and really beefed up their defense a little bit. So without that, this is probably the weakest Georgetown defense we've seen in a while, and they're still not that bad. Moore has not been particularly great, at least in terms of consistency. He's going to need to stand on his head against the Terps, especially if Spanos and company go crazy. Keys for Maryland to win this game, they just got to do what the Terps do. Take care of the ball, attack methodically on offense, fucking thrash everyone all over the field defensively, allow McNaney to see his shots and play his game. If that all happens over the course of the first half, this game could be over early. Maryland's not a team that goes out and just beats the ever-living shit out of people and runs scores up and creates these big spreads, but they are capable of doing that, especially the way they're playing right now. So I think that, my prediction, Maryland by 4. I don't think they're going to kick the crap out of Georgetown. I think Georgetown's going to hang. I think Georgetown offensively has been playing as well as anyone in the country. They've got it figured out, and they've got guys that are contributing deep into the roster. So that it's just all going to have to come together for Georgetown to win this game. I think if Georgetown just even plays a reasonably good game, they're going to lose it by 4. I think they have to play an exceptional bonkers game to be in it by the end and, have it come down to 1 goal with time left on the clock. All right, next one, Syracuse and Princeton. Now, how Syracuse got here. They played an insane game against Harvard, saw the Orange down 11-6 with 11 minutes to play in the 4th. They'd go on a 6-goal run to take the lead late, only to give up a goal with 6 seconds left to Owen Gaffney. I'm watching this game with my children behind me in the basement, and I am pumped. I'm just thinking this is all going to go great for us. Even as Harvard got the ball down on the other end, I was a little nervous, but not crazy. And then the F-bombs I dropped in the basement and the level of scared that I put into my 13 and 11-year-old children as I started dropping F-bombs when that game got tied up at the end, because at that point it just did not feel good. It was crazy. Overtime ensues. It was Owen Hilt scoring his only goal of the game after a terrible day shooting and feeding. He played a bad game. I kept texting my buddy saying, Hiltz is one of the reasons they're there, but he was killing this team in terms of their offensive production and efficiency. He was a black hole for stretches of this game, but Hiltz scores his only goal of the game after, that terrible day. Spallina throws a feed that scared the shit out of me to Hiltz, cutting down from the high crease. Hiltz gathered it, buries it. The rest is history. Cuse wins and moves on to play this game. How Princeton got here, they beat the shit out of Towson. It was a reasonable 11-7 at the half, but a 9-3 third quarter put an end to this game without a doubt. Princeton had 4 guys with 4 points or more. Nate Kabiri, Tucker Wade both put up 5 goals and 2 assists in the game. Just 2 dudes with 7 points in a playoff game. That's crazy. Princeton dominated the faceoff battle. They won in cage. It ended up not being much of a test overall. But hey, credit to Towson for coming back from, 0 whatever the fuck they were to making the fucking tournament. That just an incredible season for Towson after a really rough start. So I want to at least give them their shine for that. Keys for Syracuse in this game. Let me get a sip of beer here. Cheers to everybody. Oh, so good. The nectar of the gods here. Syracuse can't come out and have a slow start as they have tended to do against the quality teams in their schedule this season. They have to keep pace over the course of that first half. And then if they do, the rest should fall into place and this should be a good game. Princeton's going to be a tough matchup, and that's the one thing I fear. Their defense is more than capable of winning their one-on-one matchups against the Syracuse attack. So it is definitely going to come down to the Orange midfielders finding matchups out top, drawing slides. If they can do that, Syracuse will score goals and they should be okay. But Princeton Syracuse has had a hard time against teams that have good defensive midfielders, especially good short stick defensive midfielders. So Princeton fits that bill. I don't think they're quite up there with some of the other teams that have given Syracuse trouble this season that have had two very good short stick D midfielders, but I like the shape that Princeton is in with their short stick D midfielders, and that could create some problems for Syracuse, because if their midfielders, if the Syracuse mids can't win one-on-one matchups and draw slides, then it becomes flying by the seat of your pants, a lot of motion, hitting cutters, and it becomes scary, and Syracuse offensively has to play a perfect game to win this one. If the middies can win their matchups, that's going to put Cuse in a good position. No doubt, Mullen and McCool both also have to have monster games at the face-off dot and in cage, respectively. If one of them is off on Saturday, the scales are going to tip massively into Princeton's hands here overall. If Syracuse plays their best ball when the defense is flying around and being aggressive, maybe even mean, maybe even cheap. I find when the Syracuse defense pussyfoots around stuff, they tend to get penalized and play poorly. When they beat people up and fly all over the field and play aggressive, they tend to get penalized, but it tends to force teams into turnovers and good things happen. So that has to happen. Offensively, they're at their best when the midfielders are dodging and redodging, bumping the ball, dodging, redodging, bumping the ball, maybe just dodging and bumping the ball. As soon as the midfielders start holding the ball on those initial dodges to try to kickstart the offense, it spells disaster for Syracuse. It will lead to turnovers. Leo, Roa, English, and then the entire second line, they have to take care of the ball. They have to dodge and then bump the ball to the next guy in line. If they do that, I think they'll be okay. For Princeton, they just have to be aggressive offensively. I think that even if things don't go well early for the Princeton offense and McCool starts hot, the Syracuse defense has a hard time with aggressive dodgers, especially when there's snipers all over the field, because Syracuse will slide and they will do a decent job of stopping that dodger, but it's always going to open things up on the backside, and they have a couple of guys that don't play well off ball. Luckily for Syracuse, all three of their close defenders are great, but when you get into their short stick D mids and their LSMs, they tend to be the ones that are getting beat at times, but they also tend to get lost a little bit on the backside, and you cannot do that against Princeton because guys like Coulter Mackesy, and I mean, Kabiri's a two-way threat, but he'll kill you, but Mackesy also, I think, is going to be key because he's one of those volume shooters and a sniper, and he's a shooter that has a really good hitch. So guys like Petramala, who aren't just shooters, they're shooters that can also dodge, move, hitch, just find space with those three-step dodges. Mackesy's one of those guys. Those guys tend to hurt that Syracuse defense overall. I feel like Nate Kabiri is going to be as much of a matchup problem overall as Mackesy, though, with his two-way presence. Princeton can hang in net with Croddick. They can hang at the dot with McMeekin. So this is probably going to be one of the best games of the weekend because these teams just kind of match up perfectly across the board. And I see this being a one-goal game, and I have to pick Syracuse by a goal as my prediction. All right, let's go to Penn State, Notre Dame. Now, how Notre Dame got here? Simple. They went on the road and kicked the shit out of Ohio State. Was it fair that Ohio State got bit by that travel bug and had to play Notre Dame in the first round? No. Do they get to cry about it now that they got smoked at home by Notre Dame? Also, no. Nectar of the gods here. I said at the beginning of the season, Thomas Ricciardelli, in order for Notre Dame to have any chance at a three-peat, he had to be huge in cage and had to be playing at a championship level by tournament time, because I believe that goalie play was one of the big factors in them having this two-peat, the repeat, as you would say. 15 saves, 6 goals against, 71% between the pipes in the quarterfinals on the road. That is not too bad. He has played at a championship level at times this season. I feel like the defense has been a little bit not a letdown. I feel like the defense has not been quite as stout around the cage as what they've been in the last couple of seasons, but I think Ricciardelli has done an incredible job trying to figure it out as a first-year starter, so he's playing as well as he needs to for them to have a chance. Will Lynch, a beast. He won 17 of 23 on the day with 13 GBs. Chris Kavanaugh handled his business. He put up 3 goals, 2 helpers. That's how Notre Dame got here, and that's how they kicked the shit out of Ohio State. Now, how Penn State got here. They won despite their supposed All-American goalie, Jack Farasian, once again putting up a huge stinker. Reed Gills won 21 of 28 draws. That proved to be the big factor in this game for Penn State against Colgate. Farasian is not going to be able to play this poorly against Notre Dame. Notre Dame and Colgate are not the same thing. Colgate is a very good lacrosse team with 2 players, Liam Connor, the Connor brothers, that are both filthy. But your goalkeeper has to play better. And Frasian has been one of the, I think one in terms of ceiling, one of the highest ceilings, but in terms of just his inconsistency, I think he's been the most inconsistent goalie in the country. It is partly his defense to blame, though, so we'll talk about that. Keys for Notre Dame to win this game: just play Notre Dame ball, win loose balls, especially in the clearing game. Play fast and loose on offense, which we know they'll do. Be aggressive and beat people up on defense, which we know they'll do. Protect your goaltender, which they've done a very good job of, especially against Ohio State. Win faceoffs with Lynch. Despite being the unseeded team in this one, I feel like Notre Dame is kind of the favorite. At least I feel like they're the favorite. I haven't even looked at the odds or anything after they just kicked the shit out of Ohio State. Now, keys for Penn State. Frasian needs to show up. The Penn State defense has not helped him. I don't like the matchups we're going to see this weekend for them. Notre Dame has just enough depth at every position to find winnable matchups on the field, and if they do that, it's going to spell trouble for Penn State. Penn State needs to play good team defense, protect their goalie better than they have, and then they could be in this game. And I think on top of that, Matt Traynor needs to have a 7 or 8 point day. I don't think Traynor can have a game where he doesn't show up and play like an animal and have Penn State still win. I could be wrong. I mean, Penn State beat Cornell earlier in the year without Traynor, on the field here. But I just don't think that that's going to fly here at this point against Notre Dame, especially playoff Notre Dame, the way that they're rolling. So my prediction, Notre Dame by 3. I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means. I think it should be a good game. I wouldn't be surprised to see it go in Penn State's favor if they just play better than they did a weekend ago. We know they're an incredible lacrosse team. They have some good wins under their belt, and they've got some close games under their belt, but they have to play better, and they have to get insane play out of their goaltender, Jack Frasian. So that's it, folks. That is it. Like I said, peep the player ratings. If we rip through here, we see number 1 is CJ Kirst. It makes sense. Why is he number 1, and why did he get the 100 score? He did so because he shot the rock at a 48% clip, put him on cage at 649, 3 game-winning goals, 2 man-up goals, 0 man-down goal. I mean, he just had an incredible season. Sam King, no surprise at all. I assumed King, as I would have guessed that King would have been one of the guys that was right up there. Owen Hiltz for Syracuse surprised me. I would have thought Spallina would have been a little bit higher up, but what happened with Spallina, bad shooting percentage, gets dragged by a pretty good on-goal percentage, meaning he's got a really high percentage of shots that are getting saved by goalkeepers. What saved him and kept him in the top 10 was just his production outside of regular 6-on-6 play here. Game-winning goal, 3 man-up goals, a man-down goal. Dude picks up GBs. Didn't turn the ball over a ton this year and then forces turnovers. So that all plays into there. Like I said, the Connor brothers here, Liam Connor coming in at 6th. Rory Connor came in at 11th. So as you see, though, most of the guys here that are up at the top were on tournament teams. I think Army is an outlier here. Albany's a tournament team. Virginia, we got Truett Sunderland coming in here. So it is worth a look, and I want feedback. I want you to look at this list and tell me what doesn't make sense, and then I can explain to you why I think it makes sense, and then you can tell me why I'm wrong. I am not going to be that data guy that doesn't listen to people here and there, albeit 3 years working on this, and it's kind of dialed, and I would argue that if you were to tell me, hey, Jack Speedle doesn't deserve to be number 4 right here, but if you look at his production in terms of total points per game, shooting percentage versus on-goal percentage is really tight, so his shooting efficiency is incredible. 7 man-up goals, meaning he's a threat not just in normal offensive sets, but when you're in man-up situations, a game winner, meaning he can score goals in situations where the game is at least still on the line. Understand, a game winner is given out in every game, meaning a game-winning goal is going to be doled out if you scored the 9th goal in a game where you won 18-8 or something like that. The dude who scored the 9th goal gets the game winner. But the idea being you're scoring that goal at a point where, it's the middle of the game typically and it's important, or it's at the end of the game. So moral of that story, this is going to be my new thing. It's already become my new obsession, especially this season so far, and you're going to hear a lot more about it. So please go check it out. Chirp me on social media and tell me why I'm an idiot or why I'm smart. I will continue to layer additional players in, and like I said, we're going to run this through the PLL season as well. So that is it. I will be back. Once again, I'm not going to do the show on the normal Sunday because we have games being played Saturday and Sunday. So I'm going to try to put the show out probably this week. I'll try to get it out Monday or Tuesday. So I'll try to get it out a little bit sooner. I know I make promises and never stick to it. You know, it's just the nature of the beast here when you volunteer as one of the greatest podcasters in the sport of lacrosse to ever live. But it is a hobby, and I don't get paid all that much to do it. So that's all. So, hey, what you could do, go to LaxFactor.com, buy yourself a T-shirt. We got some sick T-shirts. This is the one I'm surprised hasn't sold better, is this Club Lacrosse All-Star, because that's just a sick-looking T-shirt. But, I digress. So that's all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Monday or Tuesday, I'll get this weekend's recaps out and everything like that. And Hoost is out. The LaxFactor Podcast.